Hello everyone and welcome back to the Premiership Quarter. Today I'm going to be doing my round 9 review of Under the Lights, where I'm going to be going through both the Thursday and the Friday night matches. That's going to be between Melbourne and Carlton at the MCG, Geelong versus Port Adelaide on the Friday early matchup at Cardinia Park, as well as Fremantle versus Sydney at Optus Stadium. Before we start, if you wouldn't mind liking the video, it would really help push this video in the YouTube algorithm and spread my content to other people. Subscribe to my channel as well, as that would really help me grow it. I'd want to hit 50 subscribers by the end of the year. I know it's a bit of a bore to do this, but it just sort of helps people sort of spread this channel a bit more, and sort of got to do it. With that being said, let's get straight into the video. So I'm sitting at my table right here where I am right now on Thursday night, editing the suspension reaction and Geelong video that I posted on Thursday night when I get a call from one of my mates who's a Carlton fan saying he's got a spare ticket, offers it to me, I accept, and as he finishes talking, he says it's apparently raining and that I should change my tip to Melbourne because apparently Carlton don't play in the rain, don't play well in the rain. So what do? I keep my tip as Carlton because Carlton fans are Carlton fans. And what do you know? They end up winning. Was it comfortable? No, it was at one stage, but it wasn't at the end. Carlton got off to a blistering start, kicking the first, I think, 5 goals of the game, and then they kicked 6 of the first 7. They were just amazing to start the game. Their midfield was awesome. Sam Walsh was his absolute best. He kicked the first goal of the game. Paddy Cripps was also exceptional. And I think Adam Chera had an absolutely outstanding first 2.5, 3 quarters of the game before he unfortunately got subbed out with a hamstring injury. But I think you also have to give props to Carlton's backline. They fought really, really hard and they were able to contain Melbourne to 0 points for the first time in 2008 in the opening quarter. Part of that was also probably due to Melbourne's poor kicking inside 50, but it was also due to their forwards not being genuine threats, and Carlton were able to capitalise off that really well. They transitioned the ball through a Melbourne defence which had been so good for the past 3 years, and they capitalised off it. They kicked accurately, which they hadn't done for the last couple of weeks, and they got out to a 6-1 lead. And that's when Christian Petrarca sort of got his game going. He moved forward, and he was much needed. I think it's what they needed to do, and they're going to have a bit of a difficult time choosing if he's a forward or a midfielder, because at one stage it was, I believe, 36-13 Carlton versus Petrarca, not even Carlton versus Melbourne. And so he looked to be on, and he looked to be the real match winner, and it turned out to be the story of the game. After that, it was very tossy and turvy, and then Carlton, just after halftime, were able to take a 38-point lead over Melbourne, and that's sort of when the rain started to fall down. Melbourne, it also just felt like they didn't stop throughout the game at all. It didn't feel like they were 5 or 6 goals down early with how they were playing. They led the inside 50 count, I believe, 13-11 at the end of the first quarter. Just they weren't able to capitalise going forward. Van Rooyen didn't have a good game at all. They tried to play Petty defensively on Wiedering, but given how muted of an offensive player he has been this year, Wiedering just needed to essentially ignore him, and Petty couldn't do anything. I thought Wiedering was excellent and really stood up. Bailey Frisch didn't really get into the game at all, and Pickett was really well held by, I believe, Alex Chincotta as well. So there was really nothing for Melbourne to go to offensively, which is why they ended up moving Petrarca forward. And then the last quarter comes, and they just get everything going their way. I believe Carlton kicked the first off of Hewitt in the last quarter, and I think that got them to a 5-goal lead. But then after that, they just went really defensive. They didn't try to get the ball going. I don't know if it was as much that, but they also weren't able to do it at all. Melbourne just locked it in their forward line and their forward half for the entire last bit of the last quarter. And off that, they were able to create pressure and cause a couple turnovers. They were able to capitalise off that. Christian Petrarca was a huge part of it as well. I believe he kicked 2 or 3 goals in the last. They got a couple, including one from Jack Viney with a very clever knockback on the goal line that I think got It was Caleb Windsor who kicked the goal, and it was a very creative play, and it got Melbourne to, I think at the time it was a 2 goal margin, and they kicked another one, I think, and then it became a 7 point game as well. And it just looked like that Melbourne very possibly could have stolen it. And then when it was a 1 point game right at the end, it was 40 seconds left, I think, at the centre clearance. You could see all of the players in Carlton's forward 50 lined up right on the edge, and they all just burst through the stoppage trying to get it going forward. The ball was kicked, I think, by Trent Rivers, and it looked like that Blake Acres would potentially take the mark, but he slipped and fell, did a Stevie G, and it looked like Melbourne could potentially get it. It was a stoppage because the kick inside 50 wasn't great, and Petrarca had the ball, and you thought, surely not, surely not, from 38 down, and he got tackled by both Cripps and Newman, and it was holding the ball. If he had broken those tackles, if he had gotten through and kicked the goal, I think it would have been one of the greatest single-handed carry jobs I've ever seen in any sport. 6 goals over 20 touches would have been absolutely incredible, but it was a game-saving tackle from Cripps and Newman, and Carlton were able to get over the line by one solitary point. We then had Geelong versus Port Adelaide on the earlier Friday night game. I think the games were early because of Sunday, Mother's Day, and they wanted to get some games left over, being only 2 for the Sunday to give time to celebrate. Port Adelaide started this game similar to Carlton, like a house on fire. From the midfield, Geelong could do absolutely nothing against Horne-Francis and Butters early. Ollie Wines was also fantastic, getting back to his 2021 best. And I believe Geelong gave up 50 points in the first quarter, which was easily their most this year. It was 8-2 to 50 to 3-3, 21 by the end of the first, which is absolutely incredible from Port Adelaide. They're able to get everything going. Willie Rioli was superb to start the match, and they really just put Geelong on the back foot to start the game. After that, it sort of teetered and tottered, but Port Adelaide were just more efficient going inside 50. Their midfield was superb, as I mentioned before, and they were really able to control the game in the first half. But you could also sense something was coming from Geelong. They wouldn't do this. They're not the type of team to roll over and get absolutely battered by a team, and they came out firing in the second half. They made the substitute of Reece Stanley for Asai and Mullen, and they put him directly to Horne-Francis, and that certainly quelled him for the majority of the second half. It got them to play a lot quicker, and with that, they were able to get over the back a little bit over Port Adelaide's strong defense. Tyson Stengel capitalized a lot off that, and a lot of really smart kicks going inside 50, kicking 4 goals, and that really got them going. I think it was a 5 goal margin by the end of the third quarter, and it looked to be Geelong potentially not being able to get enough energy to go into this last and make a comeback, but they were able to do it. And I believe the game was tied at some point during the fourth quarter. Um, it wasn't quite tied, but it was close. And Geelong just couldn't quite get that extra goal. Every time they got 2 in a row or 3 in a row, Port were able to peg 1 back. And after that, it just looked like they couldn't quite do it. Port Adelaide held off enough and were able to get a really solid win that helps them push for top 4 once again this season. The second Friday night matchup was between Fremantle and Sydney, and this was a very weird game, I think you could call it. Fremantle were actually not too bad if you don't look at the scoreboard, like Sam Mitchell says, and Sydney were also not too bad. But the real difference in the game, quite clearly, if you do look at the scoreboard, was inaccuracy versus accuracy. Fremantle were 4 goals 15 for the night for 39 points, 19 shots, versus Sydney's 13-9. And I believe they were 13-2 or 13-3 at one stage. Clearly the difference in the game. So 22 shots versus 19 would indicate a relatively close game. If you compare that to the Carlton Collingwood game, so not Carlton Collingwood, Carlton Melbourne, it was 21 shots to 17. And so there's actually a decent comparison there. Carlton were able to win by a point, whereas Sydney were able to win by 8 goals. And so if you want to look at the difference in the two teams, it's clearly that. This has been an issue for Fremantle before, and this is one of the best aspects of Sydney's forward line. A lot of it were the type of shots they were getting. Sydney were able to get a lot of over the back shot, over the defense shots, a lot in the square, a lot of simple 30 out regulation shots, whereas Fremantle struggled to get those type. And once it goes bad, I think they were 1-9 at one stage, it gets really bad and it becomes a mental thing for players and they just can't shake it off. I think for Fremantle, a lot of it is good that you can actually take out of this, which you wouldn't necessarily think after an 8-goal loss. But Sarong held up really well against a really good midfield in Sydney. Jeremy Sharp, I thought, was also very good. He had 28 touches and kicked 2 goals too for a winger. Kicked 2 goals out of their 4, and as a winger, that's a pretty good result. Luke Ryan had 26 touches, although he was pretty quiet in the first half. Brayshaw didn't get to quite the heights he's had, but James Age continues his great season. But I don't think there's too much wrong with Fremantle. It's just that their forwards didn't look up to it today. Patrick Voss kicked a couple of behinds. Jai Amos only had 6 touches and was probably one of the lowest rated players on the ground. Michael Frederick, I believe, had 8 touches. And then having Michael Walters as the sub probably wasn't the right choice if you wanted to win this game, because he does provide a bit of that class up forward. It's also one of Nat Fyfe's worst kicking games, because he was just absolutely dreadful. I think he might have had 3 out on the fulls, which is something you rarely see from a player this day and age. For Sydney, though, I just think they were absolutely clinical. Ollie Florent was excellent. He had 28 touches and 13 marks and over 400 metres gained as well. Jake Lloyd was very, very good, continuing his good start to the season. Warner kicked 2 goals and had over 20 touches, so he's really, really been able to get on the scoreboard to start the season and has been huge for them, getting back to his 2022 best. And then Nick Blakey, again, 26 touches. They were just able to control the game. Thought Errol Goulden wasn't superb, but he was still pretty good. And then James Rowbottom also just getting his averages of 9 tackles a game. So outside of that, I just don't think there's too much for Fremantle to change, and Sydney just continue their excellent start to the season. But that's going to be the end of this video. If you liked it, please hit the like button. It'll really help push this video in the YouTube algorithm. Subscribe to the channel if you like this type of content. There's going to be a bit more to come. Leave your thoughts about the round so far in the comments below, and thanks for watching.